Welcome to my screencast. This is Anindya. Today I'm going to show how to deploy Flask app to Azure app services and how to build a CI/CD pipeline using Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. So let's get started. So in order to start this project, we need to first create a personal GitHub account, and we also need to have access to the Azure portal. So I have already created my personal GitHub account, as you can see here. And I have also generated an SSH key uh, from my Azure portal. So if you can go to Azure portal, you can open up a Cloud Cell. And from the Cloud Cell, the first step is to generate a SSH key. So for that, you can use this command. So I have already created it. So it is showing it's already existing. So you can go to this location and copy the content of the SSH key and add it as a SSH key here in your GitHub account. So this will help us to communicate with GitHub. The next step is to build a GitHub Actions pipeline. So GitHub Actions is a continuous integration pipeline, which will help us to do a continuous integration and also do some kind of test and lint in the process. So for that, we have to go to our repository. So we have already created this repository and we have also cloned it to our Azure Cloud Cell. As you can see here, if I do a ls, you can see Udacity CI/CD project. So let's go inside that. And if you see the content here, we have so many files. So now the GitHub Actions, how it will work is if you go to the GitHub Actions for the first time, you have to set it up. And as I've already set it up, I can see if I click on GitHub Actions, I can see all the workflows that I have. So currently I have a sample Python application, which is as you can see, we have run it before. So let's test it. So what we'll do is we will just go ahead and make some changes in our GitHub repo. So okay, now let's go to our app.py, for example, or we can go to hello.py or hello_test.py. And here we can add test function for Azure for GitHub. So let's save it and add it to the repo. Let's put a commit message. And let's do a git push. Okay, so now it is showing that we're not able to push. So we have to first pull it from our Git repo, from our actual origin, because we might have made some changes there. So we have done a git pull, but as it is failing, so we can do a rebase. Now we have actually done the git pull. Now let's try to do the git push. Okay, now the push has worked. So let's go to GitHub and see what is happening here. So if you can see, we have actually the commit message is coming here, change test.py, and our GitHub action is in progress. So we will let it run. So it might take some time. So the next step is, so we have to build a continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. So Udacity has already provided us with a starter code for that. So if you go to the Azure Cloud Cell and list the files, we can see this is we have a starter code. So we have already copied that starter code to our actual repo. So you can see all the files are present. So here we have a app.py, which is the Flask app, and we have a joblib ML module, which is already trained module for predicting house prices. We have a make prediction.sh and make predict Azure app.sh. So make prediction is to test the app locally, and make predict Azure app is to test the app in the Azure web services, Azure app services. So let's try to see if the GitHub action is completed. Yeah, if you can see that it has actually completed and the deployment was successful. So this is how the GitHub actions will work. Now you can see that all the steps are successfully completed. So as I was discussing about the next steps, right? So here we can test our app locally first. So it is saying that no module name flask, obviously, because we have not activated the virtual environment. So before that, we have to actually activate our Python-based virtual environment. You can find all the steps in my repo README file. So after we activate it, and we can actually try to run our app.py, and the app would run. So what will happen is now the app is running in a local mode. We have to see if it is actually running. So what we can do is we can go to a new Azure Cloud Cell, and there we can do a test of this. Okay, so let's go to our repository and do a. So this is the prediction that we are getting, which means that our app is working as expected. Now the next step is to build a Azure web app. So to build a Azure web app, we can follow along the steps here. So here we have mentioned that we can use this command to create a Azure web app. So for now, I have already run this because it will take 3-4 minutes. So I am not going to create it again. But you can execute this in the Cloud Cell, and it will build one Azure web app for you. Now, if we go to our Azure portal, we can actually see the web app running over here. Okay, and also let's see if the web app is actually it's up and running. So if you go to the website URL, you can find this sklearn prediction home. So this is it is running mode. So next step is to build a Azure DevOps pipeline, because we will do a continuous deployment. So what we'll do, we were already tested the GitHub Actions. Now what we can do is we can actually build a Azure DevOps pipeline to see the continuous delivery. So for that, you need to first create an Azure DevOps organization, and then you can create Azure DevOps project. So I have already created an organization and a project. So let's go into that. So this is my Azure DevOps project. If I open it up, I can see I have some pipelines that is already there. So first step is to go to the project settings and create a service connection. The service connection will actually connect with our Flask app. So I have already done that. And for this, you have to provide all your subscription details and tenant ID and other stuff. So once you create the service connection, you can go ahead to the pipeline section and you can create a pipeline. So the step is to go to the new pipeline and select the GitHub account that you have, and you can select the repo. So after you select the repo, you have to select this option, Python to Linux web app. Now we have so many other options also. You can select create a starter pipeline. you can create existing Azure pipelines. But for our web app, we are going to select this, and it is going to ask for a free or for your subscription. So once you select the subscription, you can validate your details. Okay, so once we have validated our details, it will ask you the for the web app name that you want to deploy, and then you can do a validate and configure, and it will configure your pipeline. Now I have already configured my pipeline. Now, if you see that it is going to generate an YML file, right? YML file. Now, if I go to my Git repo, I already have. So if you see here, I already have one Azure pipelines .yaml file. Okay. So because we have already set it up, I'm not going to create one more pipeline because it will run like two pipelines at the same time. So let's go back and check out our new pipeline. So we have a pipeline already created. Now what we'll do, we will make some changes in our GitHub repo. So what we can do is we can go to our Cloud Cell and we can open up the app.py. Here we can change this HTML to say something like Azure app, right? So now let's do, and also first we have to see if pipeline is enabled or not. So you can go here and click on the pipeline, and then you can do a setting, check the setting. It is actually in disable mode, so let's enable it. Now if we go to the runs, pipelines, and then runs, we don't have anything running. So let's see if we are able to run it from our. Now let's do git add, git commit. So as soon as we push it to our repo, the pipeline will trigger, right? So let's go to the pipelines. And we go to the pipelines, runs. So it has actually triggered. Now it will take some time. So we'll come back once the pipeline is successful. So we can see that our app has successfully deployed now, and all the steps has actually completed. So let's see if the changes got reflected to our web app or not. So what we can do is we can go to this website and hit a refresh. And you can see that it has come, the change has already reflected, the Azure app is coming here. Now let's see if the prediction is working fine for this. And it is also returning the correct prediction. So we can see that using Azure DevOps, we are able to execute my CI/CD pipeline, and that is working as expected. And the final part is to do a load test. So I have already started a locust on my local, which is running in this local host. It's 089. So what we can do is we can actually start a new test with let's say 10 users, and let's say the spawn rate be 3 or 4, and we can swarm it. And we can see that our web app is actually taking up with the requests, and we can also check the charts for this, the total requests per second, the response time. Good. So we can see all the steps are getting successfully executed. So this is how we can deploy a Python-based Flask app to Azure Web, Azure App Services, and also build a CI/CD pipeline. That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening.